There we go. Okay, well, this is our continuing Margin and Mission Ignition series. Today is Labinar 2, and we have the luxury of being able to spend an hour and a half with all of you to continue our exploration of earned income possibilities. And we're titling this session today, Identifying Opportunities to Do Good and to Do Well. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you and your teams during our little mini Zoom consulting session. And each of you and your organizations are, in fact, or have been exploring earned income possibilities. As I said, we're glad you're here. Why are we here today? So as you heard from us during Labinar number 1, our goals are to continue to focus on earned income. And in particular today, we want to continue to explore your entrepreneurial possibilities, to learn, in particular, from 3 organizations. And we're going to share their stories and their experiences about earned income. So you'll have some insight into what some other nonprofits in the region have done. And then to also continue to apply some tools, some rigor, some thinking, some discipline as you identify your own organization's most valuable earned income opportunities. As I said, our agenda is action-packed. We're going to start in just a moment with a little bit of a recap from Labinar number 1, just to sort of quickly flash back and bring everybody up to speed. And then we will share, as I said, 3 stories from organizations who went through a pretty big deep dive into earned income possibilities. We're going to do an exercise, and then we'll wrap with some next steps. As you know, we are big believers in social media, so please feel free to get connected. If there's something that's a tweetable moment or something that you'd like to share on social media, we'd certainly be delighted if you did that. We have our usual Zoom housekeeping items. So Josephine Eisenberg, hello, will you please walk the team through these?
Sure. And for those of you who just joined, I just want to point out that the session is being recorded, and you will get a link to that recording tomorrow when we send out follow-up information. So if everyone could stay muted so that we reduce the background noise, that would be great. And when obviously it's time to talk or you have a question, you can unmute yourself. Also, if you haven't already, please rename yourself with your first and last name and your organization's name. There's 3 dots at the upper right-hand corner of your photo box, and then you get a drop-down box. There's a button you can click to say rename, and then just add your organization's name there, please. Put your questions in the chat box, and we'll answer them as we go along. And at the end, there will be a question and answer session so that Mike and Larry can answer those questions that we haven't got to yet. That's all, and thanks for being here.
Excellent. Thank you, Josephine. And yes, we will have some Zoom polls for all of you to participate in today, so stay tuned for those. We're going to do our usual Zoom photo, so I'll turn it over to Josephine to do that. And if you wouldn't mind showing us your pearly whites by turning your video on, if you'd be so kind, we would appreciate that.
So give me a second, I'm setting up my screen. I will say smile and hold, and I'm going to take 2 photos. As I always say, I've learned if I just take 1, it doesn't work very well. Give me a second, I'll give you a heads up. And here we go, smile and hold. And relax. And one more time. Here we go, smile and hold. Perfect, thanks again.
Okay, Josephine, thank you. And let's continue. So You heard from us during Labinar number 1 that we have a few Labinar must-dos. Those continue to apply to today's Labinar and our future ones as well. Again, this is an opportunity for you all to open your minds, to explore possibilities for earned income. We hope you'll learn something new today, and at the same time, you'll probably reinforce the things that you already know. And then, of course, last but not least, Larry and I, all of us are big believers that earned income is fun, so we certainly hope that you'll have a little fun today. You know it gets serious when we pull out our baby pictures. So today is the debut of those infamous baby pictures. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Michael Oxman, and I'm one of the managing partners and principals in a consulting practice called No Margin, No Mission. Last time I zoomed in from Chicago, but today I'm zooming in from beautiful Sarasota. So I'm hunkered down here for the winter and was able to escape that nasty Chicago chilly weather. My partner in crime is Larry Clark. Larry, say hello.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Larry Clark, the other managing partner, and I am zooming in from the Seattle area.
And of course, this initiative would not be possible without the generous support of our friends from the Patterson Foundation. For those of you who haven't met them, you can see their smiling faces here. Of course, Deborah Jacobs, President and CEO, Michael Corley, who's a Senior Consultant for Administration. Connor LaGrange is a fellow with the Patterson Foundation, as is Michael Zimmerman and Josephine Eisenberg. And without Josephine, of course, we would not have a session today. So Josephine, thank you for all of your coordination, your support, and handling all the logistics. Just a reminder to everybody that this initiative, Margin and Mission Ignition, which is the 2021 iteration, is the Patterson Foundation's gift to each of you and includes 4 90-minute Labinars, each one designed to address a specific earned income topic. And then along with that goes 2 30-minute one-on-one virtual consulting sessions with Larry and I, No Margin, No Mission. And as you know, the first one took place in between Labinar 1 and 2. And then our second mini Zoom consulting session will take place after Labinar number 3. And they're a great opportunity to come together for us to talk with you about your homework, answer questions, for you to take action and move things forward. And then we often say that the Patterson Foundation many times offers something more, and there is a something more with this initiative. So for those who fully participate in the Labinar series, we will offer at the end of the Labinars a process to be considered for advancement to an intensive consulting phase of the initiative, which would include business plan development, business plan implementation, and then for a period of time, what we're calling post-implementation tracking and monitoring. So again, that will be a process that you'll need to apply for at the end of Labinar 4, and we'll continue to share more about that as our Labinar series continues. Okay, we're going to introduce our first poll question. So I guess, Connor, I'm going to turn to you to pull up poll number 1.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I've moved from TPF's glossary guide to poll questions, and I think eventually Mike and Larry's job. So I'm just working my way up. So we'll launch this first one. And the question is, what's been most valuable about your MMI experience so far? Is it the Labinar information? Is it the time to focus on that earned income? Is it the opportunity to work with your team? You know, the one-on-one consultant time, completing worksheets, or all of the above? Coming in fast and furiously. Give it about 10 more seconds. 6, just a couple more. All right, give me 5 more seconds. I'm not good at math, so we went from 10 to 5 over the span of 20 seconds, but that's okay. So we're gonna close this one and share the results. So it looks like a vast majority of 52% have said all of the above, followed closely, but not really, by the Labinar information, then the consultant one-on-one time.
Okay, we like that. You know, if you're getting a combination of all these things out of these Labinars, that's a great thing. Information, focus time, working with your team, some consultant one-on-one time, completing the worksheets. That's great. So we hope that continues as you move through this series. And we're going to move on. We like to start our Labinars with a quote, and today's quote is very much in keeping with exploring possibilities. So as Thomas Edison once said many, many, many years ago, when you've exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you have not. And Larry and I know through our work with hundreds of nonprofits over the course of many years that the possibilities truly are endless when it comes to earned income. So if you find yourself scratching your head about what could we sell in terms of products or services, remember to open up your minds and be creative and explore possibilities. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry, and he's going to do a bit of a flashback with each of you. So Larry.
Good morning, everybody. There's a lot of new folks on the call today. So we want to do a 2-minute flashback that will encapsulate an hour and a half. So there you go. So here's a picture of folks that attended the first one, and a couple of things that we moved on. Mike, do you want to keep going? There were 3 types of earned income that we focused on. They're listed there. And, you know, we helped you think about your current and your future earned income opportunities. Did a SWOT analysis. All of you went through that process. Thank you for doing that. There was a number of aha moments on our calls around the SWOT analysis. And then you did some risk and mitigation. For some of you, that was the first time you had maybe gone through that process with a program or a product or a service. We introduced the margin of mission matrix, and this was an aha moment for many of you. We had a lot of conversations during the one-on-one calls about this, and some of you thought it was high margin, high mission, but it was actually high mission, low margin, some of your work. Some of the process that we went through, we met with each one of you. The calls usually went over the 30 minutes that we had scheduled. There was a lot to talk about. Some of what was gained out of it was, I know a couple of the projects that we worked with, you thought you had grants, but you actually had contracts. So some of you didn't know you were doing that much earned income. So we were happy about that. Highlights, you were really enthusiastic. Everyone at least had at least one earned income possibility. Some of you are really challenged to figure out which one do you choose? How do you choose it? And, you know, Mike and I encouraged you to not make that decision quite yet, but you have some time to do that. And organizational capacity is an issue for some. Some of you have, you know, 1 FTE or, you know, very, very small organizations. So capacity is a bit of an issue. So let's do our, I guess, second poll question.
Yes,
Connor.
thank you. And the second poll question is, thinking about your earned income progress since Labinar #1, what has transpired in your organization? We have significantly advanced our thinking in action, made some progress, but there's more to do. We didn't move the needle a ton, or maybe you had too many competing priorities and no time to think about this. So feel free to answer. Again, surveys are always anonymous on Zoom, so we want your honest feedback and thoughts. Give it a couple more seconds. We're at about 75%. All right. I feel like I work for Pew Research or something.
You do.
Go ahead and end this and share these results. There we go. 68%.
All right.
Wow.
Thanks, Connor. We're happy that most of you made some progress, but there's much more to do. And you know that. We know that. Some of you made some significant, and some of you, we understand, you know, it's a really busy time of year too, and you couldn't get a lot done over the past month. So let's stop sharing. Let's go on to the next slide. So exploring earning income possibilities. I'm going to have Mike take it off of screen share. And what we'll do is just, does somebody have an earned income that they're already doing, or one that they're really focusing on right now that they want to share? Maybe we'll have one or two people share. We love all of you, but we don't have a lot of time. Anybody want to share? And keep yourself on mute. Lori, I think, Lori, you're not.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, there we go. Anybody want to share? Raise your little virtual hand and we'll call on you. Mothers Helping Mothers, Sherry.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I mentioned last time on the Labinar one that I had this idea, and it was just a matter of getting so excited I wanted to get off the call and start, but we started. So these were the blessing bags that we want to have our clients who are desperately in need of an extra source of income, but have babies and stay home. We want to make them do this. So we did a prototype. This is Donna. Donna went home and made all of these bags to see how long it takes to do in 1 hour, how many bags. So we have kind of a cost analysis started, and we have these cute bags for Christmas made with upcycled fabric from our donations that we don't want. So we're thrilled. We know exactly what we can do. We just need all the tools and to figure out payroll, but that's hopefully coming.
And your pricing structure, right? You've thought about that. Okay.
Somewhere between $6 and $10 is what we think a bag would sell for, and that would cost less than, I don't know, it's about 50 cents, something like that.
Wow. Wow. Good. Good for you. You guys are like blowing ahead. Awesome.
Yeah. We're bad at homework, but we're good at this.
All right. All right. Somebody else want to share their idea or something they're already doing? Raise your virtual hand. Anybody see any hands?
I think Lori Sweet from Seal of Freedom raised her hand.
Yeah. Lori.
Yes, so we are an anti-sex trafficking organization. So one of the things that we want to do with this project here is add to what we're already doing. And that's where we offer mentorship to other organizations who want to do what we're doing, so that they get to open safe houses in a safe, sustainable, healthy way. And we want to set them up for success. And so right now, we've been doing that, but what we want to do is build a learning management system. So instead of helping, 20 at a time, we can help 200 at a time. So to build the capacity to be able to do more and bring revenue in from that as well.
Awesome. And Lori, you're already doing work all across the country. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
All right, good. Well, thank you. I know there's other hands that are raised. We need to move on, but thank you for the two that shared just now. And others, you will get an opportunity a bit later to share. Mike?
Okay. So we're going to move into kind of the heart of today's Labinar, which, as we said earlier, is to share some examples of organizations in our region who have gone through a process, much like you're going through, to both brainstorm, explore earned incompatibilities, and then also to start to vet them and put them through a process to think about which was the right one for their organization to pursue. So 3 stories. These are, again, organizations we've worked with through this Margin and Mission Ignition initiative supported by the Patterson Foundation. And as you'll see, each one is unique. They're unique organizations in terms of their mission, all different. They're different in terms of their size, their operating budgets, and also they're unique and different in terms of the type of earned income venture that they decided to pursue. One thing to note, though, before we share these, is that each of the 3 organizations were, in their own way, really prepared to succeed at their earned income ventures. And we have a series of criteria that we ask each organization to think about before they pursue those earned income ventures. We call it LWRCC. We briefly alluded to it during Labinar number 1. You're going to hear more about this during our next Labinar, but that LWRCC and having that alignment in terms of leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture is important to ultimately creating a successful earned income venture. So just something to keep in mind. Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the first story.
So let me introduce Tom Melville. Many of you might know him in the greater Sarasota area. He's the executive director of the Literacy Council of Sarasota. And we worked with him just a couple of years ago and still working with him actually. So their mission is to improve adult literacy through personalized needs-based tutoring and small group instruction. And they've been doing this a long time, and they have a lot of classes that are up and running and a few staff and a very dedicated board. So they considered 3 earned income possibilities as they were going through this process that you're going through now. They considered small group instruction classes. They were already doing some of it, but they weren't charging. Standalone workshops that maybe they could do in the region or maybe do, other places. And then tutor training workshops. So actually teaching people to be the tutors and then charging for that. So they kind of went through these 3 processes. They went through exactly what you did, and we'll dive into that just a little bit. So they prioritize them using the SWOT analysis, the risk and mitigation exercise, just as you have done in your homework over the past month. And then they gathered some preliminary information. There was, there might be some questions that came up that they had to do some brainstorming around or that they had to get some answers for. And then they had conversations internally and externally. So they spoke to their board members, they spoke to their donors, a few of their donors out there. And part of that conversation is about, let's not surprise anyone that we're going to move forward with this. Let's have the conversation, let's get their ideas and get some input. And then they prioritize them looking through some screens that we use, which is market need and demand. Are they getting calls for this earned income? Are they, is anyone emailing them asking for it? And the second one, do customers have the dollars to purchase it? So whoever their key customer is, do they have any money to buy this product? Are there businesses that might have the dollars? Are they individuals and they're expecting them to pay? So they really had to think, do the customers have the money to buy this? Is there operational ease, or is it complicated to lift? Can they do this very easily, maybe with their current staff configuration, or maybe adding a half-time person or a full-time person? The next is speed to market. Can they do this quickly? Can they do this in 6 to 8 months and get it off the ground? Or is this going to take 2 or 3 years to actually get off the ground? And the longer it takes, maybe the more work it would take. And, some of the enthusiasm might drop off over that period of time. And the last 2 are more gut feelings as they're deciding kind of that margin contribution. So if you remember on a previous slide, if there's customers out there that have the money, they can maybe think about that margin or the dollar contribution in such a way. It's hard to put a number on it, but at least they can say, yeah, we'll have a margin contribution here because we can probably deliver this service cheaper than we can sell it for. And then mission contribution. Mike and I always try to keep the work that we do with nonprofits mission focused. So is this going to extend their mission as an organization by selling this product or service and increasing literacy in the region? So based on it, they narrowed the focus to 1. They secured board approval. So think about that. As you're thinking through your product or your service idea, does your board have to vote on it? Do they have to approve it? What does that conversation look like? Start to think through that now, because you might have to set that up at a board meeting at some point in time. and share with key staff, volunteers, and donors. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important to communicate as you're moving forward with the idea with those that will be impacted by it. You're going to ask donors for startup dollars. Your volunteers might be helping deliver some of those services, and key staff. If you have a number of staff, obviously you want to share it with them if they haven't already been involved. So here comes a poll question about Literacy Council.
Yes, and that question is, which earned income opportunity do you think that they chose? Small group instruction classes, standalone workshops, or tutor training workshops? Give it about 35 seconds. Wonderful. All right, we've got about 60% responses. A couple more seconds and we'll turn it back over to Mike and Larry.
All right. By far the winner here was tutor training workshops. And the winner was not that. It was small group instruction. So you guys bombed on that answer, but that's okay. Some of you got it right. So they looked at their small group instruction classes for businesses, nonprofits, and schools. So they looked at those three target markets. They hadn't really done a lot of work with businesses before. They had done some work with schools and with a couple of nonprofits. So they wanted to offer basic education, GED prep, and English as a second language for employees, clients, and parents. So we went through the business planning process. They selected a team to put the business plan together. We worked with them for 3 to 4 months, and they had their leadership, board, and staff. So it's really important that a board member is involved. We expect a board member to be involved during the business planning because you as an executive director, or maybe you're a board member on this call, understand that you need to have that advocate at the board level as you move forward, that you need to have that board support to really get this off the ground. So they developed a business plan, input from all, authored by the team. We use a business planning software, which we'll dive into at a different Labinar, but the whole team got engaged and authored it. Their board reviewed it at certain times along the way, and then they communicated with key stakeholders. They didn't want to surprise anyone when they launched this business, other than maybe any competitors that might be out there. So then they raised some startup capital, and we do a fast pitch. So it's kind of like Shark Tank, but it's kinder, gentler. We bring them together and they have 15 minutes to share their business plan. And the picture over on the left was actually at that fast pitch. They had a number of donors there that we call mission impact investors. And they incorporated an ask into that meeting. And they ask for the dollars. The people know exactly why they're coming. They're going to be asked for funds to help kickstart this business. They did other presentations locally. They showed up at events. There was a couple of donors that couldn't come to the fast pitch, so they met one-on-one with them. Actually some very large donors they met one-on-one with. And they had some really diligent. Lori, yeah, there we go. Lori, you keep unmuting. Maybe, I don't know what's going on, but let me go back. So there's full engagement of their board. And that was really important. All their board was there, and full engagement meant each one of their board members provided a contribution to get this business off the ground. And they actually exceeded their goal in their startup capital. So then we started implementing with them, and we spent 3.5, 4 months with them again in implementation, and they restructured, they added a new staff member, and the startup capital helped paid for that staff member. They developed some marketing and communication strategies. They developed a whole new website, which really helped launch this business. They had a sales outreach, which included, they purchased a CRM program, a customer relation management software, so they could keep track of who they're talking to, when they're talking to them, what kind of proposal they got out to them. It really keeps track of that whole sales process. And then they launched their business. Oops. Mike, did you mean to do that?
No, I don't think I did. Sorry about that.
I thought you were like switching it up on me or something here.
Gotta
So,
keep-
so in their business plan, they had 3 years of revenue projections and then net revenue projections. And you can see it grew over time, and then they hope to have $62,000 in net revenue by the end of their year 3. And it's based on 30 service agreements in year 1, 47 in year 2, and 58 in year 3. So really detailed budget, including every single revenue line that we could think of, every expense line that we could think of, including an overhead rate and a profit margin was built into it. So outcomes, positive brand exposure definitely took place. These are other outcomes. A 50% increase in people served. They wanted to reach 1,000 adults. They actually reached way more than 1,000 adults over the 3-year period of time. And 30% increase in volunteer tutoring. They had a lot of volunteers that came to the table and wanted to participate in this. So do you think, thinking back over the past 2 years, did it help them or hurt them in this earned income venture? So let's talk about that for a second. Anybody have some thoughts? Want to raise your hand? Share? Type it into the chat box. Did the past couple of years hurt or help them? No ideas. Well, let me share with you what happened.
Looks like Tina raised her hand, Larry. Larry, you're on mute.
Somebody muted me because I didn't do that.
It looks like Tina raised her hand though, so she's got a
Maybe
thought.
Tina muted me as she did that, right? I'm kidding. Go ahead, Tina.
Tina, you're on mute.
I unmuted myself. I hope I was supposed to do that. I'll just take a stab at it. I bet it helped them. You know, I'm just taking a guess that they most likely went virtually. May allow them, the pandemic may have allowed them to do more virtual teaching, and people had a little bit more time on their hands in other ways where, you know, less running around. So I'll just take a stab at it.
Awesome. Financially, it didn't help them all that much, as you can imagine, just because you couldn't get in person, but they actually pivoted to virtual. They had never done virtual trainings before, so you're absolutely right there. They contracted with somebody to help that knew virtual trainings because they didn't even know how to put the platform together. So they contracted with somebody to do that, or they never would have got it off the ground. So now they're doing virtual trainings and in-person trainings, and they will never back off of virtual trainings again. And they've reached populations that they couldn't have reached because these folks are out of the community now. So they don't have to come into a workshop, or they don't have to travel. So they're going to be doing both. It's kind of a new future for them. So thanks, Tina, for your comments. Right.
Okay, so let's change gears and go to story number 2. This is a very different story in terms of the type of organization and the type of enterprise that they launched. So I'd like you to meet Peggy Fear. She is the head of school at Charlotte Preparatory School, and that's in Port Charlotte, Florida. And the mission of the Charlotte Preparatory School is to prepare students to be positive, productive individuals, to provide a well-rounded education, and to create a passion for lifelong learning. A very, I guess, unique school from a few different perspectives, but perhaps the one thing that really set them apart when they were in our labs, I guess going back now 2 or 2.5 years, was that they were very entrepreneurial in terms of the way they thought about the school. And you know, if you know the world of schools, oftentimes that is not the case. So they did not have a shortage of earned income possibilities that they were considering. These were the three that sort of bubbled to the surface. One was, well, they've got a big school with lots of classrooms and lots of other space. So could they perhaps offer those up for rent to various organizations and members of the community? The second idea that they had was to essentially have a business where they made class supply kits. So as you know, when your kids go to school, you've got to go out and get them that list of class supplies. Well, they thought maybe we can circumvent that, offer those class supply kits, make some money, and then in turn save the parents the hassle of having to go out and purchase them. And then the third earned income possibility that they explored was a school store. So a retail store that would actually sell a variety of different things to students as well as teachers. So no shortage of earned income possibilities here. As Larry said earlier with story number one, just as each of your teams have done over the course of the past few weeks, they took those ideas and they put them through some rigor, some discipline, a bit of a process, a SWOT analysis, a risk and mitigation exercise. They too had to do some information gathering to learn more about those earned income possibilities and better understand some of the gaps in information that they might have had. And they also had a series of conversations just to run these ideas past some folks, both internally and externally. Parents, board members, community members, what do you think of these? Good idea, not a good idea, and so forth. They also, as Larry said during his first example, put it through another series of criteria to understand their viability. So did each of these ideas seem to have market need and demand around them? Is there enough folks with interest out there who would make them viable? Did customers potentially have the dollars to pay for what they would be selling? Very important. They don't have money, you probably don't have a business opportunity. Could they get this to market with relative operational ease versus complexity, which can present a problem? And also, could they get it to market with some relative speed as opposed to an elongated process that might take 2 or 3 years? And then importantly, of course, would it generate margin, significant enough margin to make it viable and worthwhile? And could it be aligned with the mission of Charlotte Prep? And as Larry said before, that is important for us as we work with you and your teams. You will hear us say it ad nauseum. How can this drive the mission of your organization in addition to contributing to the margin or the revenue? So based on going through that series of exercises, applying that rigor and discipline, they did narrow the focus to one. They did take it to their board for approval, and they did share it with their key stakeholders, staff, board, volunteers, donors, and funders. So, Connor, I'm going to ask you to bring up the next poll question. This is, I guess, a bit of a drum roll here.
Yes, and it's which earned income opportunity did Charlotte Prep choose? School store, class supply kits, or classroom rentals? We've got about 70%, so maybe give it 10 more seconds and I will share those results. All righty, here we go. Let's see how accurate we are today.
Okay, well, it looks like the winner is the school store, but not by a long shot. We've got a close second here with classroom rentals, and then in third place, class supply kits. So I think, you all realize that these are all pretty good ideas. Seem like they'd be pretty viable ideas. Well, what they ultimately chose was a school store. So you did get this one right. It's a great idea for a school for a lot of reasons, but offering a store both online and on site or brick and mortar for students, for teachers, faculty, and others to ultimately purchase a variety of things. So school supplies and classroom supply kits. So again, as you heard me say just a moment ago, one of their ideas was to sell classroom supply kits, which they actually incorporated into this store. So I guess for those of you who voted for supply kits, you were right, because they made that part of this business. They also knew that they could sell their PE shirts and uniforms, which they require students to buy every year through the store. They could sell school spirit swag, and importantly, snacks and beverages. And remember, what makes this such a great, one of the things that makes this such a great idea is that the reality is they knew that the students and families ultimately had to purchase these items elsewhere. So why not sell them through a school store and ultimately create an opportunity for parents to have the convenience of being able to get it at the school, know that every dollar that they're spending contributes to the mission of the school, and then, of course, also just having the ability to go into the store whenever they want, whether they're in school or purchasing online 24/7, 365 was a good thing. The other thing about this school store that was really powerful for the school was that it presented an opportunity to really align it with the mission of the school by providing entrepreneurial education and a training program for students. So what they did is they actually built a curriculum around the school and the entrepreneurial retail side of the store, trained the students, and then gave them an opportunity to work in the store. So what a great idea to tie this store to the mission of the organization. It also gave an opportunity for the first time for alumni of Charlotte Prep to purchase school branded items. And they've got a sizable alumni group who still has ties to the school. And then, as I said before, importantly, they made it very, very clear that for every item purchased, it would help to support the mission of Charlotte Prep. So unique concept here. Oh, I should say too that they decided to call it the Fin Shop. So you can see their logo up at the very top of the slide, the Fin Shop being the mascot, tied into the mascot of the school. And they launched it. They've put that Fin Shop little mascot and logo on a lot of school spirit and swag merchandise, and it has become quite popular. As Larry said during the first story, once they decided what the business was going to be, then they worked with us to develop a business plan. And we are huge believers, as you know, in developing the value in developing a business plan. Whether you're launching a new business or you're going to expand and grow an existing one, it is a very, very valuable exercise. So they selected their team, which in this case consisted of their leadership, board members, staff members, students, teachers, and they really viewed it as an opportunity for collaboration among their kind of core group of stakeholders. That business plan was developed with input from everyone, and it was authored by a team. And of course, there was communication that went back and forth on an ongoing basis during the process. The startup capital was raised both by working with a fundraising consultant Her name is Sarah Leonard, and she provided that team with really a nice process to think about messaging, about donor cultivation, and who and how they would get folks to the fast pitch, which again, Larry shared during the first story. That fast pitch ultimately turned into 2 fast pitch presentations, both of which had a full house. They had their board step up, and they raised nearly half of their startup capital at their first fast pitch. So that is no small feat, and it was something that their team felt extremely proud of. And what was unique about this fast pitch was that it was actually a fast pitch that was presented by the students. So as you can see in this picture here, Michael Corley shaking the hands of one of the team members, but they just did a terrific job with their fast pitch. And of course, then there was diligent follow-up that had to take place with their prospective donors and investors. They did incorporate their financial ask into a variety of local meetings and presentations and events. And ultimately, they too exceeded their goal for their startup capital. But a business plan is just a business plan, and until you implement it and bring it to life, it doesn't mean a lot. So the next phase of work for this team was to actually help implement that business plan and bring it to life. So what did they have to do as part of bringing that business plan to life? Well, they had to figure out where that store was going to be in the school, which meant reconfiguring some space and then doing the build out of the brick and mortar store. They also decided they were going to have an on-the-go cart that they could wheel to school sporting events and other parts of the school where that mobile cart for the store was needed. So that was an innovative little extra that they decided to do. They also had to source inventory, so all the stuff that they were going to sell in the store. They had to hire a part-time staff person to help them manage it, which in this case ended up being somebody else who was already part-time in the school. And they just added some additional time onto that to that individual's responsibilities to help manage and run that store. They also had to develop an e-commerce platform so that they could have an on-site store. They had to purchase a POS system, which ultimately would help them both on the selling side and then managing on the back end. And they also had to create sort of their own internal marketing campaign to help spread the word and build visibility around the store. So like every business plan, it had 3 years of financials in it. It's no small feat to have a school team really work at, understand, and develop the financial projections. Year 1 was really a break even in terms of their net. Year 2, they did show a $30,000 profit, and they're not completed with year 3 yet, but the goal is to have $100,000 in gross revenue and a $50,000 net. And it looks like they will hit their number this year. This store, this operation has been an overwhelming success and has just been such a unique, I guess, surprise and delight for the school and everybody who's been affiliated with it. There are other outcomes and results that have gone along with this venture. I guess sometimes we call them ripple effects. But one of the great things that has happened is that by launching this venture, it's led to some added enthusiasm and excitement in the school for students, for teachers, for parents, and that's a great thing. It has also ignited an entrepreneurial, I guess, spirit and that's something that maybe didn't necessarily exist before, and that has become much more of the culture of the school. It did provide a springboard as well for some additional innovation, which has resulted in some additional school and store offerings. So they just launched for this holiday season a special holiday, what they called silver store items. They're selling them both online and in the store, and they've already sold out of a number of items. Easy gift items that students could buy for siblings and family members, and it's been quite a hit. And it's also added an element of fun to the school that students have both enjoyed and look forward to every day. Okay, so let us ask the same question here. We'll open it up to anybody who would like to respond to this, but do you think the pandemic helped or hurt Charlotte Prep's earned income venture? Anybody have any thoughts or want to venture a guess on that? Feel free to raise your hand. Did it help or hurt? Anybody? Lori?
Well, I think it probably helped just because it was easier to go to that store maybe than to some of their school store than to bigger stores, just because of COVID. So yeah, I mean, I think for that reason alone, it probably gave a boost to their sales.
You're absolutely right. So this is a venture that actually benefited from the pandemic. Even when the school was shut down early on in the pandemic, because the store was available online, people could purchase what they needed or wanted, and the school did a quick pivot, made arrangements for orders to be made online and paid, and then cars could drive up to the front of the school, and they would bring the merchandise to folks in their car. So yes, it ended up being a very good thing. And ultimately, once school was back in session, the store continued to do very well. In fact, it's funny, we do get pictures frequently from the school's leadership about the store. And they've sent us pictures showing kids who line up in the store every day to purchase snacks and beverages. So that was something that the school didn't even have in the past. And that in and of itself has turned into a fantastic stream of earned revenue as a result of this store. So again, that's Charlotte Prep, a little bit of a insight into how they pursued their earned income venture as part of this initiative. Okay, number 3, Larry, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks. I just wanted to add one thing onto the last one. Many of us were in that room listening to the fast pitch that the students did. And honestly, the students were amazing when they did their fast pitch. It was videoed, and we want to track and follow some of these students because they will definitely be entrepreneurs in the future. You will see them as business leaders, I'm sure. So the third one is Manatee Performing Arts Center, and that's the team at Manatee Performing Arts Center. We didn't work with all of them, but Janine wanted you to see who their staff was at the time. Janine is in front and center as executive director. So they're committed to being the community's premier theater and region center for cultural, educational, and artistic expression. Many of you have probably gone to a performance at Manatee Performing Arts Center. It's a fairly new building. It's been there for a few years. Beautiful space, absolutely beautiful space. So they had 3 earned income possibilities that they thought through. One was charge for parking. So across the street, there's a huge lot, vacant lot that they owned. And they thought, there's not a lot of places to park in the city. And if the city has an event, maybe they should charge for parking. Second is venue rental. So their building was empty a lot of the time when they're not doing a performance or when they're not doing practices. And this is actually a space upstairs where they hold some events and things, but a lot of the building was vacant during the day and sometimes in the evenings. And the third idea was conservatory classes. They offered a few classes, but they had never taken it to a whole nother level to say, we could offer theater classes to kids and adults, you know, and really expand that educational opportunity, you know, in a conservatory. So those are the three opportunities that they looked at. So, you know, as all the other ones, they went through this process, the SWOT, the risk and mitigation, preliminary information. I mean, they had to look preliminarily at zoning requirements, at liability issues for their building. There was a number of things that they needed to gather to make that decision. And they had conversations internally and externally. They had to talk to, you know, some of the other hotels in the community, maybe that they could rent parking spaces out to, for instance. They had to talk to wedding planners to see if they would maybe rent their space for wedding receptions and things. So there was a number of folks that they needed to talk to about this idea. As all the other ones that we went through this process, the market need demand, they had to look at customers. And, you know, you can think about those three ideas. They really believed all three of them probably had customers that could purchase. So they had to prioritize what customers might have the more resources, and, you know, and how could we measure that? Operational ease, speed to market, and then they looked at margin contribution and mission contribution. And they felt at least 2 out of the 3 were really high mission contribution. The parking lot, maybe not so much, but the parking lot maybe have really high margin contribution. So there was kind of balancing there. So based on that, they narrowed the focus to 1. They secured board approval, and their board actually voted on this. As you know, the board members involved with the process all along. So Janine had she actually had 2 board members that were involved with the idea generation, and they shared it at a board meeting and made a decision. They shared it with key staff, volunteers, and donors. And if you know Janine, she's a little powerhouse. So she met with a number of donors and volunteers prior to let them know kind of what was going on, what they were thinking, and to gain some input from them also in the decision-making process. And then, what do you think, Connor? I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes. So which earned income opportunity do you think they chose? Parking, venue rental, or the classes? One of the 3. Answers are streaming in at a rapid pace, so we'll give it about 10 more seconds, and then I'll turn it back over to the tag team that is Mike and Larry. All righty. Wow, looks like everybody's already responded. A couple more seconds, and here are some results. If I could do a drum roll, I would. There we are.
All right, you guys squeaked right in there with the right answer. It's venue rental. Thank you for taking that poll and making the right guess, at least a number of you. So they did venue rental. So they thought about that venue and options for meetings and receptions and banquets and celebrations. It could be available days and evenings and weekends and catering services. They actually had they created a couple of agreements with local restaurants, vendors to provide the catering and beverage service. And then they could do parking, and they added valet parking into that. And they could park in that vacant lot across the street. We took them through the business planning process, just as we did with the others that were shared today. They developed that business plan, they offered it and authored it by one. And what we mean by that is we want a business plan to have kind of a single voice. So a lot of people might be involved in the developing of the plan, but one person kind of puts it together. So there's one kind of language or voice within that business plan. And then they communicate it with key stakeholders. And they wanted to make sure that there was a really good, strong communication strategy for this, since they're very visible in the community. And they went through that whole business planning process, put together a really good business plan. And then they raised their startup capital. And you can see there's a picture there with Janine at the fast pitch. Lots of people were at the fast pitch, and they included that they generated significant resources at the fast pitch. But then knowing Janine, she made a point of showing up at a number of different other organizations to provide that opportunity. So she would take 10 or 15 minutes on an agenda for a Lions Club or the Rotary or wherever it might be to share the idea and to gain some resources. She also met one-on-one with some very high giving donors that weren't necessarily able to come to the fast pitch. And she was really good, and the whole team was good at that follow-up. Their full board got engaged and provided a contribution, and they ended up exceeding their goal also. So during that business plan implementation process, they developed a new website. They had to do sales outreach. They hired a full-time staff person to manage this business. They purchased and trained new staff on a site management software. And that site management software was really important because it needed to talk about which spaces were being rented on certain days. And it did a bit more, and I'll get into that in a second. And then they launched the business. So their projected revenue for the 3 years, you can see on the left and on the right, they had a net profit margin. So 15,000, 24,000, and 72,000. The first couple of years, they met that mark. And year 3 was kind of in the middle, kind of starting the pandemic, didn't quite meet the $72,000 figure. You know, you can imagine in a venue rental where you couldn't necessarily show up, whether it was good or bad. We'll see how they pivoted, right, Mike? So other outcomes and results. They added that staff person to manage the venue rentals. They upgraded their financial management system. This was really important for them because they had to take a look at their staffing configuration that they had. And they realized they didn't have the right person doing their financial management. So they actually switched some staff out, brought in a new CFO, and upgraded their financial management system and went online with it. They added soundproofing upgrades. I mean, you can't be tap dancing upstairs when you have a big, show going on downstairs. So they needed some soundproofing to rent the space upstairs that you saw the picture of. They had to add some facility management software, which I mentioned earlier, and that managed really the theater management, their costumes, their equipment, it managed all of that. So they're really spread that throughout their organization. Lots of people are using that right now. And then it provided the basis for the board to proceed with the conservatory business plan, which they did. So the board was so excited about this business planning process, the launch of this business. They understood the need and the opportunity of what a business plan brings to you, that they actually launched the conservatory business, and they're doing some classes. So I gave you too much information maybe for this, but do you think the last year and a half, last 2 years helped or hurt them? Anybody want to share? Want to raise their hand? Virtual hand. Ooh, no one wants to take a dive into this one. I'm going to just call on somebody then. Somebody said, Deb said, wholeheartedly, it hurt them. Right. It kind of hurt them. I mean, if you can't be face to face with anyone, no one's having events. And part of it was they were closed down. They couldn't even open their doors for a while. So it did hurt them. They did pivot a bit. They started doing some virtual things, not necessarily in this business, but their organization started to do some virtual activities. And now this business is starting to pick up again, and they're looking forward to increasing their revenue. So the last couple of years have been an anomaly for all of us. So it was definitely for them. Thank you. And thank you, Deb, for taking the risk of sharing. Mike.
Let us pause for a minute. We've shared 3 examples of organizations that have gone through this process. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about any of the 3 stories, the organizations? Because we would like to at least take a few minutes if you do have any questions.
Mike, do you want to open it up?
Sure. Pamela.
Okay, I unmuted. I was curious why the school store hired someone part-time instead of utilizing volunteers.
Yes. So the schools, typically what Larry and I will recommend when it comes to an earned income venture is that it's typically good to have a paid staff person, especially if it comes to managing an earned income venture, simply because it's a much more reliable way to run a business. We have found that oftentimes in the past, when a nonprofit relies on volunteers to run their earned income venture, it doesn't always go according to plan. Volunteers will frequently say, I can't come in today because of something, or it's not going to work because of something. So much like a business is run by having at least some paid staff, we believe that that's a good practice for you as nonprofits to get into. So not always, but generally the case. It's a good question, Pamela.
Maybe I can just add a little bit to that. And also, Pamela, it's you don't want to just put anyone in the business. You want somebody with the background and whatever the business is to be involved or engaged, especially if you're going to hire somebody from the outside. So whether they're really good at sales and marketing and that's what you need, or whatever it might be. Manatee Performing Arts Center hired a manager, but that person was really good at sales and marketing. So that was primarily their job, is getting the clients to come in the door. So
I think another thing that was interesting about the Charlotte Prep store was they did have teacher mentors who participated in the store, especially as it related to teaching the entrepreneurial classes that the students went through. And then also remember, the students actually are trained and work in the store. So they are not paid. They essentially, and I guess I wouldn't call them volunteers either. I mean, it's part of their curriculum. So they are getting credit, for working in the store and essentially, benefiting from it that way. So.
Hey, Mike.
Questions? Anybody else have a question?
Jessica has her hand raised.
Hi.
Jessica.
Hi there. So I just have a question I'm thinking about some of these organizations that provided trainings or had small group classes. And I think that's very similar to one of the earned income opportunities that we're brainstorming or we're already kind of working on. But my big question is, because I want to make sure that in this case, it's a teaching artist or it's somebody that's doing the training. And we want to make sure that we're paying them fairly. So what is a general rule for a percentage that is actually becomes the earned income for the organization, and which percentage goes towards the intellectual property of the person doing the training? Does that make sense? Is there a general?
I guess maybe I'll take a dive at that. It depends. It depends. It depends on what the business is. It depends on, what the field usually pays that kind of trainer. So an artist might charge, there might be some kind of general figure in the community per hour that an artist gets, as opposed to somebody who's doing IP training or IT training. So it really just depends. It depends.
But
Mike,
there's
I
not like a
don't know if
percentage on top of that you would add on, right? To make sure that you're earning an income, but
Right.
that person, it's like, so it depends. Obviously, their fee is going to fluctuate. So is there a general rule for how much you would charge on top of that to make an earned income, I guess is my question.
So there's an hourly rate that you pay that individual, right? So then
Right.
you have all your other expenses within the budget. Then we
Mhm.
want to see an overhead rate built into the
Right.
budget. And then we want to see a profit margin. And,
Seems
so
like a really high
so
price.
once you put it all together, it's a
Yeah.
good time to take a step back and say, what's working, what's not working in this budget? And can we either compromise places, or we're not going to compromise and try the business, out of the gate the way that we think it needs to go. So it just really depends. I'm working with an organization right now that's at that space. They realize that their consultants that they need to hire are too expensive for them. So they're like, what do we do? Do we offer them less, but offer them more work? So they might take it if we guarantee them 50 hours a month. Or, so it's like, we're having that discussion right now. How do you kind of manage that within the budget? So Mike, anything to add to that? I'm sorry.
No, I think that's a good representation. The only other thing is look to see what the market, what your competitors are charging. Look to see what the market will bear. That might give you a sense for, sort of where you should be priced. And then you got to sort of work it backwards, to fit your budget. So it's definitely more art than science. And it is something, Jessica, that we can talk about a little bit more during our next Zoom consulting session.
Yeah,
So
thank you so
Mike,
much.
There is a question in chat from Jennifer. What process did these organizations use to decide which of their possible earned income ventures they ultimately went with?
Well, Jennifer, I don't know if you were actually there for the case studies, but we kind of walked through that process. But they essentially took the ideas and put them through a series of vetting criteria. So you'll see in the handout that you'll get tomorrow how they went through that process. But we do have a series of vetting criteria that we suggest each organization go through as you're thinking through which of your earned income possibilities are most viable. So stay tuned for that. Take a look tomorrow. And if you have questions, you can certainly email me.
Karen, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
There we go. Well, thank you for explaining, because I'm a little familiar since I live so close to Manatee Performing Arts Center. I know that they have conservatory classes. So that was my first guess. But obviously, I mean, to me, after I thought it through, there would be more earned income from the venue rental than, but it was a need, and it was such a good idea that they just segued into that for the classes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and do you help, well, I imagine you do, develop the fast pitch and the donors for the fast pitch? I mean, there are people that we have reached out to before in our area, local businesses and people who've expressed an interest in supporting us as a small theater group here. And some of them did, but there's no one that we have reached out to other than through the Giving Challenge and Facebook's Giving Tuesday and everything that has deep pockets. So do you help develop or encourage people to brainstorm to find the donors that could really be significant in launching something like this?
It's a good question. We spent a couple of weeks helping you put your fast pitch together. So you already have your business plan in hand, right? Or it's almost in hand, but by the fast pitch, you have it, it's printed, it's ready to go. We help you put your 15-minute pitch together. You practice it a number of times before you actually get there. And along the way, in the past, Sarah Leonard, as Mike mentioned, is another consultant that gets engaged with you, or has in the past got engaged with the organizations, and helps you think through how do you get those people into the room? What does the communication look like?
Mhm,
Helps you
mhm.
brainstorm people outside the box. There might be people who you wanted to ask for resources, but you didn't have the right idea. You didn't have the right project. There might be some entrepreneurial kind of folks who would love to get a copy of this business plan and provide you some resources. They've never seen that from a nonprofit before. So we help you expand that list, but it's your job to get them in the room. It's your job. It's not our job or Sarah's job. You have to reach out and get them. We help you with the process to pull
Okay.
it all together. All right, Mike, anything to add to that?
No, that's good. I think we've got another question from Lori. Lori, go ahead.
Yes. I'm not interested in names here, but have you ever seen an organization go through this whole process and then never end up with profit, with earned income with their project? And if so, what happened? What was what didn't work?
It's a really good question. And yes, I think the answer is we have definitely had, but certainly far fewer and in between, some organizations that have not done as well with their earned income ventures as they had hoped. Typically in those cases, something happened that resulted in the problems, the issues, and the challenges. More likely than not, it was something that wasn't implemented properly in terms of their business plan. They didn't hire the right staff person to bring the earned income venture to life, didn't have the right talent or skill set to pull it off. So again, more often than not, we can point to some specific reasons why it didn't work. Now, I think, stuff happens, when it comes to business, we all know that if there's something going on in the marketplace that you didn't anticipate, something that changed, something that happened, it can have just a negative impact on your business venture. So I think, again, the pandemic is certainly an example. There are organizations we've worked with that unfortunately had to either put their business venture on pause, maybe it didn't rebound or hasn't rebounded, and they've had to go through a reboot or a refresh. We have also had some organizations that just pulled the plug on their earned income venture because they weren't in it for the long haul. An executive director left, a new one came in, and they didn't believe in it or buy into it. Board member didn't like it, caused the board to question it. They pulled the plug. So part of it comes back to that LWRCC that we started to talk about before. If your LWRCC falls apart or isn't in alignment, that can also be of detriment to your earned income venture. So yes, it is not all a bed of roses when it comes to earned income ventures, and not everyone is going to be successful.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to have an exit strategy. If you have a business and it's just not working, what's your exit strategy going to look like?
Right.
So
I think, just to add one thing, I think what I've noticed more, I guess, is the wrong person's hired in the business. So you need somebody with a sales and marketing background, but they love this person internally and they just want to move them up into that position and keep them on board. And they don't have the right background to pull it off. So they keep doing business as usual. And it just never gets off the ground. And it might be 6 months later, the executive director finally understands that, and it might be too late because the business is launched and first impressions are lasting, and it just doesn't get off the ground then. So it's really important you have the right person, moving in if you're going to hire an FTE.
that's it. And I think, was it Karen, you had a question? Are we going to talk about LWRCC in greater detail later on? And the answer is yes. So tune in to Labinar 3 because we will be talking about it in much more detail during that session. Did anybody else have other questions? Anything else in the chat box that we're missing, or any hands raised that we're not seeing? No? Okay. Well then, let's keep moving. We're getting close to the end of our session here. So bear with me while I pull our screen back up. And we have another poll question to introduce. So Connor, you're up.
So last question, how are you feeling about your organization's earned income possibilities? Number one, we know exactly which one we're going to focus on, or maybe we're trying to decide the top two. We have several and are considering them, or we're at a loss. And again, sometimes that's an okay spot to be as well. They're streaming in. We'll give it about 30 more seconds. I keep saying 30 seconds, but I don't actually know how long that is. So it's basically however long until Larry tells me to turn it back over to him.
Or Mike.
Or Mike, either one. It's great. All right, take about 5 more seconds. I think we've got all the results in. I'm going to share. Here we go.
Good. Well, so the good news is, I think for most of you, you've got, one or two earned income possibilities. And now the question becomes, which one is most viable? And if you already know that, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. There's a couple of you who said you're at a loss. So Larry and I will work one-on-one with you to help you figure out what your possibilities are. So stay tuned on that one. But again, as we're looking at earned income possibilities, we're happy to hear that most of you have kind of a sense for what those potential options are.
Mike, can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
The two of you that said that, please reach out to us. Let us know who you are. It would be helpful for us to know.
So as we're getting ready to wrap the session today, we do want you to continue to take action as you're exploring these earned income possibilities. You're going to get another worksheet that'll come in your email tomorrow from Josephine. And the worksheet, which you can see here, is going to give you the opportunity to put your earned income possibilities now through this next screen. So we shared this today with each of you when we went through the 3 examples or the stories. So assess your top earned income possibilities in each of these 6 areas. So thinking through market need and demand, does it exist? Are there customers with dollars to purchase what it is you're going to sell? Is there relative operational ease versus complexity? Can you get it to market quickly rather than slowly? And what kind of margin and mission contribution do you think this earned income venture would generate? So rate these all on a scale of 1 to 10. So you can use your gut, you can use your instincts. If it's always a good thing to ask the question, how do I know it, or how do we know it? And if there's opportunities to sort of prove how you know it, that's a good thing. That'll contribute to you understanding the viability of this particular earned income possibility. Okay, so that'll be your homework. And then in terms of our upcoming next steps, we do want you to tune in and join us for the 3rd Labinar. That's going to be on Wednesday, January 11th from 10 to 11:30. And we're calling that one how to position your organization and earned income venture for success. And as we said before, that LWRCC that we talk about, leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture, will be a focal point for that session. We do, of course, have some criteria that we ask you to make sure you meet in order to come and join us for Labinar 3. So you have to have attended our Labinar today, and obviously you are all here, so that's a good thing. Please complete the follow-up survey. Those are really helpful for us. So those of you who submitted the follow-up survey after Labinar number 1, thank you for doing that. is the more of you who will do the survey for Labinar number 2, the more information it gives us just in terms of your feedback. We want you to complete the worksheet that I just referred to prior to the next Labinar. Make sure you register for Labinar number 3, and we want you to bring at least 3 team members to the session. So again, the ED CEO, a board member, and a key staff member. And of course, you can bring more folks to the session if you would like to do that. As I said, you'll get a follow-up email tomorrow. And in that follow-up, just like the one that you got after Labinar number 1, there will be a link to today's recorded session. So if you want to look back at the session, you can do that or share it with others. We'll have a handout with today's PowerPoint slides. The follow-up survey link will be in there, as well as the worksheet. And then, of course, be on the lookout for an e-invitation to register for Labinar number 3 as well. And then ultimately our series will continue. Our 4th and final Labinar will be in February, which seems like it's far away, but it's not. Wednesday, February 9th. And the focus for that session will be on business planning for nonprofits. So what are the components of a business plan? What are those things you need to think about? Because ultimately that will become a blueprint for your earned income venture. Okay, well, let's see. We've got 2 minutes left before we wrap. Are there any parting comments, questions, or thoughts that any of you have before we wrap and say goodbye? And if not, you get 1 minute, a 1 minute gift of time to enjoy. So anybody have any parting comments, questions, or thoughts? Raise your hand, type in the chat box. And if not, we will say thank you. We will wish everybody happy holidays. Enjoy yourselves, stay safe. We know it's a busy time of year, end of year appeals and all the other stuff that's going on. So with that, it doesn't look like we have any raised hands, right? No comments in the chat box?
No.
Okay, well,
Right.
thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
everyone. We were
Thank
so
you.
delighted.